it does follow the money supply. So the money supply expands. Bitcoin follows it. It trails it by about 8 to 12 weeks. So it catches up to it, and you can see, how that correlation is.
Breaking news. The global M2 officially hits a new all-time high. Bitcoin tends to follow suit. And just to clue everybody in, what is the M2? M2 is a broad measure of the money supply that includes M1, which is cash, checking accounts, and traveler's checks, basic money in the system, plus savings deposits, money market funds, and other easily accessible but not immediately spendable assets. And the money supply is growing. So how does that affect Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin has about an 82% correlation to the M2, and it also lags by 10 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks. We see that in the data throughout history. And while it's not an exact correlation, why only 82%? Why not 95%? Well, because certain big crypto-specific events throughout history tends to pull the correlation off either to the positive or the negative. So we see the Bitcoin price in white since 2014 and the M2 supply in pink since 2014. And remember, there's about a 10-week lag. So the money supply pops first, and then Bitcoin tends to follow about 10-ish weeks later. Many macro investing experts agree.
Global M2 is a good proxy for global liquidity, which means number go up.
But again, generally speaking, Bitcoin has an 82% correlation to the M2. Obviously, when FTX was collapsing at the end of 2022, it doesn't matter what the M2 was doing. That was a crypto-specific event that brought Bitcoin down, just like at the beginning and the lead up to the beginning of 2024, when the Bitcoin ETFs launched for the first time, it didn't really matter what the M2 was doing because the Bitcoin ETFs affected Bitcoin to the positive. So it goes both ways. And this is where we are today. While Bitcoin's price is stagnating around the low $80,000 range, the M2 just hit an all-time high. And why is the M2 popping off? Especially with Donald Trump tariffs and other macro events that seem bearish, why is M2 flourishing? Well, the US money supply growth is accelerating. The M2 money supply rose 3.9% year over year in January, the fastest pace in 30 months. This is the 11th straight month of money supply expansion, and the amount of US dollars in circulation has reached 21.6 trillion, just $16 billion below an all-time high set in April of 2022. Meanwhile, the global money supply has risen by around $2 trillion over the last 2 months to its highest since September of 2024. And what all this means to you is the money supply in the US is expanding again.
The other thing that people get very confused about is they're like, well, what happens if the Fed don't cut much more? I don't care. What happens if rates don't go down a lot? I don't care. What happens if they don't drain the Treasury General account? I don't care.
By the way, the M2 is so much more than the US. It is global. Raoul Pal explains.
You've got to understand the global picture is the big picture. And the global picture, like 2017, will most likely be driven by China. I think the US will stimulate, but China is the big one. Chinese bond yields are now at 1% or somewhere close to it. They have run out of runway.
And we're seeing China start to expand their money supply, meaning while the US is injecting thus far $560 billion, Germany has added over $500 billion stimulus, and China pumping $300 billion into banks. This is the exact same setup that led to the bull run of 2021. And understand what this means. The global M2 money supply has surged significantly while Bitcoin has faced an excessive sell-off. If this correlation remains, given these conditions, it's anticipated that BTC will climb back to $100,000 by May. The blast-off date will be around April 30th, and then where M2 is today, anywhere between $98,000 Bitcoin to $116,000 Bitcoin. And that's just by May. Where could Bitcoin be by end of year, even with the global Trump potential trade war? Crypto expert Arthur Hayes explains.
A lot of fear on the timeline. Markets aren't doing well. So again, just where do you think we are? Are we still in a bull cycle? Are we near the end?
I absolutely still believe we're in a bull cycle. Obviously, the bull cycle has been a lot more concentrated in Bitcoin. versus a lot of the other altcoin sphere.
And by the way, this channel is called Altcoin Daily, so even though Bitcoin is the market mover in the short term, I want to keep filling your arsenal of tools you can use to find the next hidden gem altcoin. Gecko Terminal from the people behind CoinGecko is a great option. I have no affiliation with them, but it's just a platform that's free to use that tracks DEX blockchain data.
Most of the 100x's I found because I follow one simple rule, and that is volume trading.
Meaning if you're a volume trader, you can see which low market cap coins are doing the best in volume. You can separate it by different blockchains if you want to focus on Solana coins or base blockchain coins. And the news today is this. Cookie partners with CoinGecko. Just as a reminder, CookieDAO is a modular data layer for the AI-driven reality. So this is your data center to track the next big AI agent or AI altcoin. And the news today is this. Cookie.fund's real-time social analytics for AI agents are now live on Gecko Terminal, and this gives CookieDAO exposure to 3.5 million plus monthly CoinGecko users. So this will bring a whole lot more users to CookieDAO. And this marks the first time that CoinGecko has integrated social metrics like this, a major step towards making Cookie a data standard in the industry. And what this means to you, if you're using data centers like CoinTerminal, yes, you already had the DEX blockchain data, meaning transactions, meaning volume, meaning chain rankings. Now we have social data powered by Cookie to give us insight into mind share gainers, meaning which undervalued, meaning low cap market cap coin has the most mind share on social media. I mean, we've talked about CookieDAO before. They're a platform on their own that gives you really interesting social data on blockchains. For example, top 4 AI projects currently with the highest market cap and mind share correlation. Mind share, again, is what coin is getting the most mind share, talking about most on the socials. They're now integrated into Gecko Terminal, mind share gainers right here. So great for the long-term potential of Cookie, and great for you as another free tool, Gecko Terminal, for your arsenal when you're tracking data to find the next up-and-coming altcoin. And obviously, I put out a video yesterday talking about final Bitcoin crash about to happen. Basically, this was just deconstructing how far Donald Trump could go with his global trade war. And even despite this, why does crypto expert Arthur Hayes still think Bitcoin is going much higher by year's end?
Are we near the end?
I absolutely still believe we're in a bull cycle. Obviously, the bull cycle has been a lot more concentrated in Bitcoin versus a lot of the other altcoin sphere. And at the end of the day, right now, we are experiencing a lull in liquidity fiat money generation. In the United States, obviously, I believe that Trump investors are consciously trying to cause a recession, or at least the appearance of a recession, so that the Federal Reserve becomes on their side and lowers the price of money and increases the quantity of money. And also, if you think about it, right, regardless of whether you think, the political side of things, if there's a lot of fraudulent payments within the system and you want to get rid of those before you move higher, you can clean up the dead weight. And obviously that's going to have an economic impact. They're okay with it because they're doing it in the beginning of their administration versus, in 2026 before the elections. Oh no, let's go reform the entire government. The voting population is going to be very skeptical of that and say, oh, that's Trump's fault, that's Vessen's fault, that's Elon's fault, versus there's probably a way that they can spin this as this is Biden's fault, this is the Democrats' fault. Again, whether or not you believe that doesn't really matter, but the markets, they're cleaning out the dead wood, and then they're going to reflate, and they're going to print more money than probably anyone's ever printed before.
So what Arthur Hayes is saying, and by the way, we discussed something very similar in yesterday's video, that Donald Trump is willing to do the trade war and take it as far as he has to slow growth in the short term, to send a message to Jerome Powell and the Fed to lower rates so they can refinance on the US government's debt and try and tackle this overwhelming United States debt in the beginning of his term versus at the end. But the United States will absolutely eventually print a lot of money, which is great for Bitcoin. And no matter how long this process takes, which is anybody's guess, the money supply is, again, much more than the US. It is global.
You move over to the EU, right? I don't know if the Greens are going to come on side with the ruling parties in Germany to do this, constitutional free to allow them to print as much money as possible to build weapons and rebuild their army. But if they don't do it this way, they'll do it another way. The sentiment is there. Europe wants to rearm, ostensibly to fight Russia, but they just want to spend more money at the end of the day. And so if it doesn't happen now, it'll happen later. They want to reflate. It might not happen in the next week to save your leveraged long position in whatever you own, but that's coming at least within the next 2 to 3 years. China is just waiting. They're going to have some sort of agreement with the US and the rest of the world on how they want to reshape the global economy. Could be good, it could be bad. I don't know what it is. But once that agreement or, fuck you, we're just going to go our separate ways, whatever that is, they're going to reflate as well. So they're waiting in the sidelines. And then you have Japan, where the BOJ is trying to raise rates. We'll see if they get there or not. But at the end of the day, they're not trying to add more liquidity into the system. So you have the four major blocks, either trying a bit of austerity to clean up the dead wood, or in the process of reflating their economies. And we're in this period where we expected all this, policy goodness, and Trump's going to do this and do that. And you might end up doing these things, but at the end of the day, it was liquidity negative. And so now we're seeing the markets finally react to that. I think in the, third, fourth quarter of this year, through 2028, we're going to have a massive money printing situation, right? America first, my nation first is inflationary. I need to rebuild every single part of my supply chain within my country to give jobs to people because they're losing them to robotics and AI, and to have resiliency in my defense space. That's massively inflationary. There's not enough private capital to fund it. They're going to print the money. And then you have essentially a declining population and this sort of robotics AI thing. How that plays out, I don't know, but politicians need votes. And so they're going to print money to make sure that people feel okay. While the economic system, and maybe whatever humanity is in and of itself, changes as well. Again, massively amounts of money printed. And then you have to service all the debt that they took off from COVID into the present. The US pretty much doubled the debt in existence, and every other country printed money as well. So again, this is a short-term pain. We're clearing out the dead wood.
Altcoin Daily is so close to hitting 1.6 million subscribers. We have never hit that number before, and our data shows that 7 out of 10 viewers of Altcoin Daily subscribe to the channel. Still about 3 in 10 watch, but have not subscribed yet. It's completely free to do, and if these metrics are correct, you're going to want to be subscribed and keep updated with a video every day about crypto. Every clip I pulled for today's video, the full conversation is linked down below in the video description. Check it out. And Arthur Hayes finishes where he sees the Bitcoin price potentially by year's end.
We had a great run from 20,000 to 110 on Bitcoin, essentially, FTX lows until, Trump coin. And now we're having a 30% correction. It's pretty normal for a bull market. So I think, yes, people might have had a little bit too much leverage. Maybe they bought too many coins, but I think we're going to clear out all that dead wood. And I still believe that we could be 250,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year. Does that mean that the particular coin you own is going to be 100x higher? Probably not, because people are getting a little bit more discerning in the type of things that they own. But at least from Bitcoin perspective, in the global, overall market capitalization of crypto, I think we're going to be much higher by the end of the year than we are today.
Like always, appreciate you. See you tomorrow.